Welcome back to another high quality, high octane, high fructose corn syrup, whatever this video is. It's been almost a full year and no actual paid DLC that expands the single player story in any way, and it's almost January, so you know what that means. Revenue is down and it's time to subscribe to my Patreon. I don't have a Patreon. I just don't. I wanted to do another bit. I just couldn't think of anything funny. God, this website sucks. You guys want me to do the cool halberd Beyblade thing where I like spin my spear really fast and it looks like a helicopter that I've done like 70 times already in completely different videos? That's still funny, right? No? No? Oh, okay. How about an ad? Enlisted is a free-to-play World War II FPS title that manages to stand out amongst a crowd of bland, underdeveloped asset flips by placing a huge focus on historical accuracy. All equipment, uniforms, vehicles, and even the maps you're fighting on were all made with genuine care and attention to historical reality. Every soldier you unlock is personalized with a unique name, skills, and inventory. Enlisted also includes cross-platform support, so console players can limit their preferences to other console players if they choose. Enlisted really has some of the most detailed skill trees for any game of this nature that I've seen in quite a while. The squad system they've implemented is a great replay incentive that makes every match you're gonna play really unique in its own way. The gunplay isn't perfect, and that's kind of something else I love about it. Something about the general shakiness really creates this environment of struggle that I feel like a lot of war-based titles are just completely missing. It's free to play right now on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. There's a free bonus if you download it using my link in the description and in the pinned comment, including 3 days of premium time, cool weapons, and several unique orders for your troops in battle. Alright, so Crystal Tears. A mechanic no one asked for, only because no one knew they needed it. If there was a rune gain Crystal Tear that made leveling up a bit quicker, I would have given that one an easy yes, but sadly no such tier exists, so you're welcome for the free idea, FromSoft. First up is the Crimsonspill Tear. There are actually 2 of these. One you can find near the Third Church of Marika, which will likely be your first Crystal Tear since it's right next to the actual flask. The second one you'll find is next to the Minor Erdtree in the capital outskirts on your way to fight the Draconic Tree Sentinel. I really like these just for how simple they are. If you've accidentally wandered into a weird ruin where all the enemies are 20 levels higher than you are, but you don't feel like being a coward, the extra security of having a last resort 100% HP top off gives you a lot of extra confidence. Perhaps too much at times. You can get them both decently early and without much hassle, as neither of them are really guarded by important bosses or behind skill walls or anything. You don't have to kill an avatar or anything like that. You just go to the place, pick them up, slam them down. You like having more health? Well, here you go. Here's more health and absolutely nothing else. It's not the tool of a master strategist. It doesn't care about min-maxing or leaving you with below 20% health so you can take advantage of those branch sword builds. It gives you exactly what it tells you, and if you have more problems than that, then it won't give a shit. My opinion of the Cerulean Tear, after much review, is pretty much completely identical. It's a resource in which the entire game revolves around, and to carry these 2 tiers with you is to simply allow more of it. As blunt as a baseball bat, as indisputable as the fucking sun, they're standard issue, run-of-the-mill Crystal Tears, and that's exactly why I appreciate them. The Crimsonspill Tear is a step down from other tiers in my opinion, and not just because its uses both begin and end at raising the branch sword talisman threshold by like 4 points, but also because it has the audacity to raise your max HP without actually fully committing to what would have been a great tier by also healing that 10% boost, but instead it just leaves you with this awkward gray gap in your health bar that wasn't there before, so might as well count this out on any ritual sword builds. I can see it having better use in the late game because 10% of your max is a number that only gets larger the more vigor you have, at which point I could see it being used in some regen or some tank builds, but even considering that, if you're already running Bullgoat's armor, Crimson Amber, Blessed Dew, Tearstone rings, whatever the shit else you can use to turn your character into an M1 Abrams on legs, this probably won't be the linchpin in your build anyways. So I hope you guys are willing to settle for a low C, because that's all I can see myself giving it. And now heading over to the opposite end of the tier list with the Crimsonburst Tear. This heals 7 HP per second over the course of 3 minutes. It can stack with the Blessed Dew talisman, it works great with Opaline Hardtear and the Uplifting Aromatic if you really just want to make sure nothing interrupts all that healing. It drops from the Erdtree avatar in the Weeping Peninsula, and the fact that you can get a tier like this one this early is extremely important. It's enough regen to counteract any poison trouble you run into in the early game, and it still manages to be a stable regen option all the way into mid-game territory. 7 HP doesn't sound like a lot. Try it out. Try it. It's a lot. Just try it out. I promise. I can't belabor the point enough that you get this from the fucking Weeping Peninsula. Pretty much the beginning of the game, or it might as well be. That amount of regen honestly just shouldn't be here, but it is. It is, and you should be thankful for it. It's strong enough to counter just about any damage this early on, as long as you go more than a few seconds without taking damage, and it's being able to mitigate poison damage means it fits comfortably into a lot of different status builds that use the Kindred of Rot Exaltation Talisman. I'm just gonna be real with you, it's one of the most broken tiers in the game, and considering I constantly poke fun at other people for calling everything broken just because they're afraid of big numbers, I think that should mean quite a lot coming from me. The Greenspill Tear gives you 15% of your max stamina. That should have been all I had to say to sell you on it, but in case it didn't sink in, I'll explain. Stamina has much more application in this game than just giving you X amount of attacks before you have to stop and take a breather for a couple seconds. A high stamina count is critical in great shield builds and are commonly used alongside guard boost talismans and other stamina boosting tools. Not to mention most of these tiers have a duration of 3 minutes, which is more than enough time you should need for most big bosses. You can continue the barrage skill on short bows for a good 2 hits longer. Spells that are able to be cast in succession you can cast for a good 2 hits or so longer. This benefit is shared with most weapons, actually. If your stamina bar is already huge, and it should be because endurance isn't just for throttling stamina anymore, then this only magnifies the benefit you're gonna get from it. The Greenburst Crystal Tear pairs well with other stamina boosting tools, obviously, but whereas the Greenspill Tear is commonly used in guard builds, the Greenburst Tear is known for just about everything else. Stamina regen is one of those benefits that has a way of paying off no matter what your playstyle is. It's kind of insane how many different builds you can muscle this thing into, and it somehow pulls its weight in every single one of them. The Greenburst Tear is dropped by the Erdtree avatar in Caelid, which means if you can take out this wooden tumor early, you can get one of the best tiers barely a few minutes into the run. It's a simple function at the end of the day. Your stamina regenerates faster. You know, that's it. Less breaks between weapon swings opens you up to a whole buffet of options. Winged sword talismans can really shine since managing your stamina gets much easier and you'll be spending significantly less time recovering. Shard of Alexander and Carian Filigreed also work really well since using weapon skills also deplete large chunks of stamina. The Thorny Tear and the Cerulean Tear are both great just because you're getting more actions than you usually would already, which means more attacks, spells, whatever you're working with. This one's a sleeper hit. There are few that outmatch this tier in terms of flexibility, and even fewer that can compete with the weight it pulls by itself. If you're ignoring this one, you are flat out fucking up. S tier, high S tier. Increasing your stats by a meager 10 points sounds underwhelming and useless, and due to how I've written these prior paragraphs, you're probably expecting me to subvert the point here by saying it isn't. Yeah, sorry, the Strength Knot Crystal Tier has very little use outside of just meeting weapon requirements. That is not, however, the same as saying it's useless. 10 points is a pretty massive improvement to any stat in the early game, and even in some mid to late game cases as well. There are plenty of huge weapons, giant swords, and hammers taller than you are right at the start of the game that have mega high stat requirements, and equally so for the Dexterity Knot Tier. Oh, surprise! I'm ranking them both in the same paragraph because they're the same exact goddamn thing. The Great Axe, for instance, has the high asking price of 30 strength despite being one of the first weapons you can get. Even considering weapon affinities, if you're trying to squeeze out extra damage from that Kinuji Katana, using a Dexterity Knot Tier isn't that sustainable when you start thinking late game. You're given both of these pretty early, and I think that's completely fair and reasonable. These tiers are here to help you find that weapon you're gonna commit to later on in the game, and once you've found it, these tiers will be of little use to you otherwise. Okay, and now for the part where I explained why I ranked these two separately and why I didn't just group all four of them together. I mean, I know I'm lazy, but fuck's sake, give me some credit. So I'm ranking these a smidge higher, and here's why. The Intelligence and Faith Knot tiers have the same benefits I highlighted with the other two, being the fact that you can use them to access sorceries and incantations your character wouldn't otherwise be able to cast. However, it does come with the added benefit of applying to certain weapons as well. It is the most goddamn annoying thing in the world to be committing your build to very specific stats and then finding a weapon you really want to use only to discover it has this weird third stat requirement. And you can't even say it doesn't make sense because the sword is made out of like moonlight or some shit. Helfen Steeple, Dark Moon Greatsword, the Ritual Spear, all really popular examples, as they not only require a decent amount of strength and dex, but also a third intelligence requirement. Additionally, some endgame spells and catalysts have stat requirements that climb all the way into the 60s. The full moon spells can be accessed much easier, and the way spells are set up in this game have have lots of different catalysts that scale with stats you wouldn't expect. All we need now is an Arcane Knot tier and the set would be complete. Alright, next up is the Opaline Hardtear. Holy shitting hell, this thing is unstoppable. All forms of damage down by 15%. That's pretty much 4 extra talismans you're wearing. The later stretch of the game has way too many elemental bosses, and this crystal tier pulls a solid amount of weight against just about all of them. Having a utility like this is doubly useful against enemies that do multiple types of damage like dragons. Ever since 1.06, physical damage negation has been added to its list of effects, meaning the item description is actually truthful now. It's great on tanks, it's great on squishy little sorcerer featherweights that can't handle getting sneezed on, much less face tanking a giant axe, and all that extra defense allows you to wear whatever armor set you want without having to worry about suboptimal defense. It does stack with Boiled Crab and other physical defense talismans, so if you actually want to boost your physical damage negation up to like 60%, then you totally can. It's just a huge ass defense boost across the board. I'm not sure what else to say about it other than you need it. You may not know it, you may not want to know it, but you need it. The Speckled Hardtear is a solid resistance boost for all status ailments, and I don't really know if it's just our collective lack of imagination or if some items are really just that useless, but I'm getting really tired of being told of all the different ways you can cross Lake of Rot, so I can only imagine how you must feel. The truth behind this tier is it's very useful in like 3 instances. The second phases of Mog and Melania involve a lot of status attacks that can be somewhat mitigated using this tier, but I'm pretty sure not a single enemy or area or anything in the game involve multiple status buildups at once, so I feel like it would be much less of a hassle to just put on one of the Horn Talismans depending on what you're about to be up against. It does have the added benefit of removing all status buildups, which, okay, sure, that's cool, but once again, a little bit of foresight, and you can probably find another consumable or item or something that does the exact same thing with only 1 or 2 ailments. Because an enemy that inflicts multiple status ailments at once is 1, bullshit, and 2, terrifying. One major benefit I can think of is that combining this with a hard tier can make a good oh shit button where there are just too many things going on and your attention is split between like 57 different things, and you just want all your problems to be over. I can understand that certain builds or certain runs may want to require specific items, and so maybe you're foregoing other options for a reason, but some crystal tiers are extremely unique and offer buffs that just aren't seen anywhere else, and I'd hate to see one of those slots go to waste just because you didn't have anything else in your inventory that could handle it. The Leaden Hardtear is the cornerstone example of why you shouldn't fall in love with potential. Any use it may have outside of PvP can be outshone pretty consistently by other poise boosting tools like Endure, especially considering the quicker draw time. Even in PvP, I can't think of too many reasons to use this over other options anyways. Endure is only 3 seconds and that feels too short for some situations, but 10 seconds is by no means an improvement. Boosting poise is one of those fragile mechanics where extending the active time too much can make it extremely overpowered. Those who think 10 seconds is too little seem to advocate for 60 seconds, and if that happened, then this would immediately become the most coveted tier in the game. Like, nothing else would even come close. I suppose it can be nice for casting some spells and skills that involve active times between 3 and 10 seconds. Most of those have to do with holding down the button in some way, like Giza's Wheel, Crystal Torrent, Unendurable Frenzy, just to name a few examples. I think I'll stick to Endure despite the shorter duration just because it's more reactionary. It has a nice defense boost, and I can see it working more for me personally. But at the end of the day, this is a situational tier at best. Whether it's 10 or 60 seconds, poise boosting without at least some kind of damage negation increased is just a recipe for getting you killed, no matter how good you think you are at the game. The Magic Shrouding Cracked Tier. One of the best options you'll probably ever be given from the crystal tiers for 2 reasons. One being there are so many different sources of magic damage you would never even expect that gets boosted by this tier. 2, it's technically a unique buff that can't be found anywhere else, meaning it can stack with anything you want it to. Anything that deals Frostbite also deals magic damage. Adula's Moonblade, Zaymor Ice Storm, magic damage. Blood Boon Ritual, magic damage. Aberrant Sorceries, magic damage. Gravitas, or any variation of it, magic damage. You can't leave your house for work in the morning without stepping in a puddle of magic damage in this fucking game. Additionally, it can boost both magic and cold affinity armaments, magic pots, and even incantations that deal magic damage, like Smaragd's Glintstone Breath. Its function is as basic as you could imagine, but the fact that it works and stacks with pretty much anything else you have access to is what puts it a good tier or 2 above its competition. When considering the 4 Shrouding Cracked tiers, this one and the Magic tier are more than likely what you'll be wanting. Not because the Lightning tier doesn't pull its weight or anything, but because these 2 tiers are the only ones that seem to affect way more types of attacks than what's obvious. Similarly to how the Magic tier affects aberrant sorceries, cold affinity weapons, and other unlikely sources of magic damage, the Flame tier affects Black Flame, Frenzy Flame, and can boost other sources of fire damage like Spark Aromatics. Using them together is Generally a dumb idea. I don't know why I started to write a sentence acting like it wasn't, but hey, if you're a fan of the Sword of Night and Flame, that actually might not be the worst strategy. It also works with magma sorceries and fire damage weapon skills like Taker's Flames. Once again, a simple function with no complexities or loopholes. It's a straight up damage increase for everything fire and absolutely nothing else. And that is precisely what makes it so wonderful. I'm following suit with my option on the magic tier here and giving this one an A. Okay, so no, this tier is not bad, not by any stretch of the imagination. I'm only saying that to mitigate any damage I could have done by not talking this one up like the other two Shrouding tiers before it. This one seems more like a high B to me, and that's because the Lightning Cracked tier never had me asking what it worked with. I had the surprise of finding out the magic tier worked with aberrant sorceries by googling and poking around in forums. Similar to the Fire tier, I was unaware of just how much these two boosted and had to be told or informed by another source of their true potential. This is not a question I ever had with the Lightning tier. What's lightning and what isn't is very easily discernible, and whereas a lot of different approaches can benefit from it, it's not a tier with any tricks up its sleeve. Planning to use this tier in your build means you'll likely be limiting yourself to Dragon Cult incantations and other similar items and or lightning affinity weapons depending on the stat you've been building. Combining it with the Flame tier will give Placidus Axe's Ruin twice the benefit since it deals both lightning and fire damage, so it's not like it isn't without its nuances, but if anything it's just a further testament to how many opportunities really exist for magic and fire buffs. Lightning can't even figure out what it wants to scale with. It should be common knowledge at this point that holy damage is probably the last one you want to ever get stuck with. This is the Holy Shrouding Cracked tier, so holy damage from all sources are increased, which means everything from holy water pots to sacred affinity weapons to fucking Hail Marys. Don't get me wrong, some holy weapons actually hit hard enough to draw massive benefit from this tier, like the Golden Order Greatsword or Malekith's Blackblade. It's just the amount of enemies in this game with holy resistance out the ass is edging on the border of unreasonable. The entire endgame has an enormous surplus of holy enemies. Elphael and Leyndell are practically brimming with the annoying shit. The last half hour of the game might as well be a boss rush mode against the Vatican. The Holy Cracked tier is functionally identical to the other three, so if we're grading it on that alone, the rating would be very similar, but one of the major consequences of signing up for a holy build is this massive wall waiting for you at the endgame. Even if we're talking from a PvP perspective, incantations like Elden Stars wouldn't receive a huge benefit from it anyways, since most would use this spell to force panic rolling and not as a damage source. That leaves the only other large advantage this tier could possibly give you, which is to make your fights against deathbirds and the undead even quicker. So I guess if you're going for a death route speedrun, you'd consider this, but otherwise, yeah, no, hard pass. I know I'm towing the line of being ratioed by giving an A to a tier with a 30-second effect, but let me explain the true power that lies within this tier. The Stonebarb Cracked tier does an extra 30% stance damage to, anything. Margit, Melania, dragons, who gives a shit? If it breathes, it can be knocked over. If you want to combine this with Cragblade or something, then essentially you get to target some poor asshole for 30 seconds and flat out just stop him from playing the game. I think this is already pretty obvious to most players, but the amount of stance break damage you can do per swing ultimately depends on the size of your weapon. Most colossal swords and weapons will obviously do the most stance damage, therefore you're going to get way more positive results using this tier on a build with a massive hammer than you will a little toothpick looking dagger. Regular axes and hammers though can still see plenty of benefit, just in case you're attached to a certain playstyle that doesn't involve swinging around a giant stone slab. 30 seconds is a shitload of time, especially in boss battles, and even more so if you're proactive. This tier's advantages don't just stop at physical damage. Anything and everything in your build that does stance damage is increased by 30%. Weapon skills like Flame of the Redmanes and Gravity Bolt receive this benefit. Fighting Crystallians now feels like smashing fine china with a lead pipe, and I could keep going, but something tells me that's all most of you need, so I'm giving this one an A. Moving on. The Spiked Cracked tier is a personal favorite of mine, as is probably the case for a lot of you. It was my first foray into the world of one-shot builds right after I learned Contagious Fury can stack with RKR. I have some memories with this tier, and I'm really trying not to let my own bias get in the way of the bottom line. The reality is, it's a tier that benefits absolutely everything a little bit. If you can master the art of timing charged attacks on a boss, this tier will only make you more unstoppable. 10% extra damage doesn't sound like a lot, and admittedly in the early early game, it kind of isn't most times, but this tier can very easily become the secret weapon of a build that places emphasis on charge attacks. It pairs well with many different tiers like the Opaline and Leaden Hardtears, as well as the Stonebarb Tear, Endure, Iron Jar Aromatic. The game's been out for a year. I'm not going to mansplain to you how to land a charged heavy. The only reason I'm giving this a B, and yes, the truth hurts, but it is the truth and it is necessary, is that this tier does not boost anything involving weapon skills, chargeable spells, or magic projectiles that come from charged attacks. This buff is strictly limited to charged heavies from a standard weapon, and I think that's okay, because if it did boost all of those things, it would also stack with Godfrey Icon, creating a very specific meta where every approach to any obstacle involves standing still and charging up a spirit bomb for 30 seconds, and that doesn't sound like a very exciting way to play the game to me. The Thorny Tier has an item description that's a little misleading, and I fear it's swayed people from trying it. It has the same "oh no short time" description line as the Stonebarb Tear, which only lasts 30 seconds. Despite having that line in its description, however, this tier lasts a full 3 minutes just like most of the others. Now the fun part is trying to guess where the mistake is here. Did they accidentally copy paste one too many times, or was the effect of this tier actually meant to last 30 seconds? Because not only can the damage increase climb up to around 20%, it also stacks with both Winged Sword Talismans and Millicent's Prosthesis, making it a fucking workhorse on lighter weapon builds. Sadly, it doesn't seem to work with some skills and sorceries that can hit multiple times like Prelate's Charge or Comet Azer, but you know what it does work with?
Pizza time.
Not to mention, they're all compatible with Yokai's Dancing Blade, and since that's what most of you were probably waiting to hear, yes, it does also work with the Regalia and Marae's swords. It can work with Carian Slicer, Waterfowl Dance, Blood Tax, and a bunch of other Ashes of War that hit consecutive times. It's compatible with much more than I thought it would be, raising the question that this tier could very well have been intended to only last for 30 seconds, because with the right talisman stacked around it, the damage difference is night and day. Next up is the Winged Crystal Tear. Don't let this tier being an Altus stop you from grabbing it 15 minutes into your run. Just grab both halves of the Dectus Medallion and just book it up to the capital outskirts, and you've just grabbed one of the most valuable tiers in the game. I don't know the exact amount it raises the equip load. All I know is that it raises it to a point where it can't ever be broken unless you're actually trying to. Maybe if you're in bull goat armor, power stancing giant crushers holding a kettlebell between your ass cheeks, but you're not going to notice a difference otherwise. This is invaluable for many obvious reasons. You'll be able to flip around like a ninja and shit while power stancing said giant crushers, and outside of looking hilarious, it also gives you access to so many strength-focused bonk builds without ever needing to compromise on weight. Fat rolling is a thing of the past, at least for about 3 minutes. Apparently in PvP, there are builds that revolve entirely around this single tier. If I had to guess, it probably has to do with running dual fingerprint shields without having your ass smack the ground like a wet towel whenever you want to dodge. This is what happens when what should have been given a 30 to 60 second buff gets 3 minutes. It's one of the best tiers in the game, perhaps way too good in certain situations, and those certain situations happen to be very common. The Windy Crystal Tear gives you 3 extra iframes to your dodge rolls. I imagine it's useful in duels because it'll mess with people trying to roll catch you, but this particular tier leaves a bad taste in my mouth that I can't really ignore. The damage penalty. On a talisman, I completely understand why it's there. Tiers are temporary. Talismans are eternal. A hindrance like this belongs nowhere on a temporary buff, even if it is 3 minutes. In fact, I'd be willing to wager the only reason the damage penalty is here in the first place is because people started remembering the Havel Armor Darkwood Grain Ring combo from DS1 and immediately combined this with a Wing Tier to relive their glory days. In which case, I can't really argue against it then. But that only subtracts from the individual value of this tier to the point where it's only useful if it's stacked with something else. I guess if you really hate the damage penalty that bad, you can just put on Opaline Bubbletear or dine on some fine crab legs and you'll never see that penalty again. But if you're willing to take it that far, using Feather Talisman alongside Dragon Crest Great Shield and one good defense incantation is only the next step after that. If I squint really hard, I can see it being useful in PvP. Kinda. That's about it though. Gentlemen, ladies, bring out your branch sword talismans, bring out your uplifting aromatics and your great shield talismans. All you need is a good bleed weapon and you've everything you need to complete the easiest level 1 run of your entire life. The Opaline Bubbletear is already great on its own against high damage 2-shotter bosses, and doubly so if your HP is already low and you aren't done using those branch sword talismans yet. However, it has a hidden benefit that the item description didn't feel like mentioning for some reason. Guarding an attack with any shield that has 100% physical damage negation prevents prevents the bubble from popping. In fact, the more I reread that sentence, the more I'm realizing that probably wasn't intended. So you know what? Forget you heard that. You can stack it with Uplifting Aromatic, but a Branch Sword user might want to save one for later and enjoy a massive defense increase twice in one go. For strength builds, it's of even greater use. If you're trading damage with something in NG +7 where everything deals fuck you damage, and you want to land a huge hit or a weapon skill with a slow windup, this will pretty much guarantee it lands without you taking any fatal damage yourself. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of tier, but the situations it finds use in finds a shitload of it. The Crimsonburst Tear restores 30% of your max HP once your health approaches the 20% threshold. However, you still take damage from whatever attack hit you in the first place. The utility of this tier ultimately comes down not to how good you are at not getting hit, but how good you are at allowing yourself to be hit by certain attacks. Let me explain. Most bosses have plenty of attacks that can and will two-shot you if you allow them to, possibly even more than that if your vigor is crap and you're approaching the late game, but a lot of those same bosses also have combo attacks, projectiles, other instances of loose damage that are very little compared to their other attacks. I'm not going to list off all the examples, but after consuming this tier and then getting hit by a low damage attack, this officially becomes one of only 2 tiers that will increase your overall HP when you take damage. It's also great for surviving said combo attacks if simple evasion doesn't seem like an option, because if your HP goes below the threshold, the free health boost you get in the middle of being drilled can very well save you from death. It can prevent you from being two-shotted, but the Opaline Bubbletear can do that more consistently. It's better against combo-heavy bosses, status ailments, and other enemies that deal quick instances of small damage, because that's where you're most likely to walk away from the exchange with more health than you had before. If you can get it to work as intended, it pays off massively, but if you're pile-driven by a strong enough attack, it'll do precisely dick and balls and you're just gonna die anyway. The Crimsonwhorl Bubbletear restores 5% of your max HP as a response to any instance of elemental damage. Overpowered? Not quite. Hilarious? Yes. It's the only tier that allows you to actually heal yourself by walking in lava. Yes, Rykard's Magma Pool in his arena also procs this effect. Any big enemy that has its own fuck everything button can easily chew through the effects of this, and you'll barely even notice it's doing any work. Against lingering damage and small projectiles, however, is where this tier really pulls its weight. Mog's lingering fire damage that he pisses out around the arena during his second phase is pretty much completely nullified by this. Multi-hit spells like Stars of Ruin, Elden Stars, any crystal sorcery, and plenty of others can all heighten the effects of this tier, sometimes to the point of barely even being able to tell you took damage. It's a 15-second buff, which sounds pointless and counterintuitive. I promise it's not. Use this during the Elden Beast fight when it summons its own Elden Stars to chase you, and you won't even know it's there. Shit, you might even heal off of it. In case anyone didn't immediately already guess what rank I have plans to put this as, it's an S. It's an S. What else would it be? 15 seconds of 0 FP cost, no limitations, no strings attached. Well, as long as some shitter doesn't come by and knock you over and interrupt whatever you're doing. Everyone wants to put this as an S tier buff because, oh my god, look at Commodase, or oh my god, Meteorite, oh my god, fuck, Unendurable Frenzy. Look at Mog, I just melted that little piece of shit in like 2 seconds, oh my god, my build is so crazy. But the benefits also continue into summoning whoever you want without having to worry about the FP cost, making it great for low mind builds. Don't feel like dealing with the massive FP costs of T. Shirolo, but you want to see what a low-level summon run would be like? This tier is exactly what you need. A lot of weapon skills that can be continuously held, like Prelate's Charge and Spinning Wheel, no longer consume FP, but you still need to watch your stamina consumption, because those attacks can still end. Basically anything you don't have the FP for, or any ability you'd rather just not have to deal with the large FP cost, you can just whip it out. Despite what it gives you, it doesn't feel all that overpowered. I mean, sure, you can just shotgun it and pull out whatever Gatling gun sorcery you have equipped and call it a day, but all any boss has to do is practice the age-old warrior technique of stepping to the right and you fucked yourself and wasted a tier. This plus anything is a substantial bonus. One of the few tiers I'd just carry by itself if I wanted. Next up is the Purifying... Actually, you know what? I'm not going to rank this one, because it feels like it would be unfair to either this tier or all the others that came before it. It's a trump card to trump another trump card. That's the whole explanation and reason to be behind this tier. You aren't going to be packing this thing into your flask in any other instance except fighting Mog, and as soon as you've wasted him, you might as well throw it in the trash. In the best of cases, it's an extremely niche single-use item in a sea of amazing buffs and boons of all kinds with different types of uses both in PvE and in PvP. And in the worst of cases, you still don't even really need it that much. The game's been circulating for around a year. There are already hundreds of videos talking about this one-shot build they made overnight using nothing but an outdated Elgato capture card and a slice of cheese. Taking down Mog before he can even get to phase 2 isn't completely impossible with a bit of forethought and a good YouTube tutorial or two. So I can't even say it's something you should specifically be searching for, even if you're limiting yourself to PvE. Oh, and if he does get to a second phase, he still heals anyway, so let's be completely honest here. I'm not ranking it, and this tier should consider itself really fucking lucky it's escaped such wrath. Okay, I've done some thinking, and I've decided I am more than equipped to handle any pushback that finds me with this decision. Ruptured Crystal Tears are absolute S tier, probably the highest on the ladder for me. They're difficult to set up, the 3-second delay following the explosion makes you as readable as a fucking nursery rhyme in PvP. It can only do holy damage, the one kind of damage everyone in the lands between seems to already know how to deal with. It's a niche utility at best, Opaline Bubbletear can't protect you from the damage, and I don't care. I just don't give a good goddamn. These tiers are still amazing. And if you're looking for any sort of logical argument or some academically reviewed empirical evidence about why I'm placing it here, you might as well be looking for that fucking subscribe button, because you obviously haven't seen me before. And just a reminder from before, Enlisted is free to play, and using my link can get you an exclusive bonus deal with 3 days of premium. Okay, is that it? Yeah, I think that's it. Shit, you forgot Twiggy tier. I forgot the Twiggy cracked tier. God damn it. It's a C. If someone invades you, you can pop it and you won't lose your runes. Otherwise, who levels up in this game? I mean, fuck.